All right, now I think we'll be being able to go with our coffee and grain marketing with Dr. Sing-Ki Lee. Um, had my other device on to make sure that we were coming across on the video, right? So we'll be able to turn that off and we're able to go. But I'd like to welcome you to our April 14th edition of the Coffee and Grain Marketing with Sing-Ki Lee, where Sing-Ki is going to take a look at this Tuesday's report of the World Agriculture Supply and Demand Estimates, the WASDE report. And we're going to look to see how that impacts or what they're saying about the corn, soybean, and wheat markets. So Sing-Ki, I'm glad you're able to join us again. Just a few housekeeping items. The Q&A, if you have questions for Dr. Lee, don't hesitate to drop those in the Q&A this morning through the Q&A feature. We're going to be dropping in some different links to you in the chat. And one of those that I will put into the chat as we begin is in case you want to see the recording or you want to go back and hear the February 13th recording, we put a platform where you can go and watch those recordings, and we'll send that out to the email list as well. So with that, we're going to get started. Sing-Ki, the WASDE report came out this past Tuesday. I know there was some discussion about this that maybe some people were shocked that they didn't make some changes to some of the supply numbers as we were looking at the report. But what did you see? You find any significant updates, or what's a snapshot of the market?
Well, first, thanks to everybody for attending my seminar. Let me share my screen for the presentation show. So can you see me?
Yes, looks great.
Yeah, I'm a little bit now smaller, right? So as you know, the April WASDE report is typically not super surprising relative to other months reports. Well, speaking of the U.S. side first, there were some adjustments here and there, but as you know, the report is just focusing on old crop and its impact was limited, and the market has not reacted much. So in my opinion, as the market was already aware of some bearishness due to the large harvest in Brazil, and the production size was already kind of a little bit fixed. So this WASDE report just fulfilled market's expectation. That's what I'm kind of seeing this report. But if I have to pick one that differed from what's expected, it would be the ending stocks. So according to the March grain stocks report, all the three major crops, corn, soybean, wheat, were reported to have lower stocks in year-to-year comparisons. In fact, previous March WASDE report has already predicted low ending stocks. So the key thing would be the relative difference between March WASDE ending stock prediction and March grain stock figures. Based on these differences, I expected soybean and wheat ending stocks would be adjusted up and corn ending stock would be adjusted down in April WASDE report, but only wheat stock was actually updated and got slightly higher, as you can see in my background. So this is the snapshot for wheat. And as you can see, there was not much difference compared to last month, and even actually not much difference from our previous coffee and grain talk. So market really hasn't changed much. That's kind of the big overview. And if we move on to the corn and soybean snapshot, let me reduce my size a little more here. So here still, as you can see, first soybean, there was no really big change from March. So almost no change. So it's kind of really stable and copy and paste work. Corn also slightly changed in terms of the total supply because import size was reduced 10 million bushels, but basically that's it. And also domestic use, feed use, a little bit adjusted down, but that's it. So market really didn't change much from the March. So and particularly, I want to again emphasize the ending stock has not changed. So that's one thing that kind of surprised me a little bit. A possible reason might be simply USDA was a little cautious of the market prospects and planning to update it later. For corn, the ending stock is forecast to be 3% lower than previous year, as you can see. And the grain stock report actually showed about 4% drop in March stock level compared to a year ago. So it's in the ballpark, I would say. So the fine tuning would be, I think it can be done later. For soybean, the March grain stocks report actually showed about 12% less than last year in soybean stocks. But as you can see, the ending stock forecast is much lower than that, minus 23%, implying that we need quite a bit of sales during the rest of the market year. When you look back, historical data, the change in the stock between March and the ending stock varies a lot depending on the export sales. So when we had some issues in exports in 2019-20 market, for instance, like it really kind of actually it went up. But typically, if we had very good sales in terms of like exports, then typically this ending stock went down quite a bit from March through the end of the market year. So the key would be soybean export sales. So at this moment, probably it might be good to check what is the soybean export sales. So this figure is the soybean export progress so far. And as you can see, in the graph, we could not make much in soybean export during the last 2 months. And considering the ups in Brazil, downs in Argentina in soybean production, which I'm going to talk a little more soon, we don't know how much uptick of soybean export we can expect during the next few months. So presumably this uncertainty in the global soybean market made USDA defer the ending stock update, I guess. And probably the main focus of the April WASDE report was the updates in foreign countries, actually. So let me talk a little bit about that.
Hey, Sing-Ki, before you go on, maybe go back 2 slides. We had a question about what's the new price of corn and beans. And I believe on the slide, it says with inflation, what's the new price of corn and beans? But I know they have the updated price, season average price on that slide. So you might want to touch that real quick.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to talk a little more as well. So probably I think this season average price is not really like quickly adjusting the inflation effect. So might be a little bit like lower than what it could feel. So with inflation, it might be, I think, at least 5% higher than this. That's kind of my gut feeling. So my short answer is probably 5% higher than this approximately. But also, as you know, this is the season average price. So probably as we are getting close to the end of the market year, we might see some difference that what we are seeing in the market and the season average price number. Okay. So, and if I move on to the foreign country issues, first, both Ukraine and Russia have their exports up in both corn and wheat. For instance, the net change from March in corn export of these 2 countries is 2.8 million tons increase, as you can see, which is about 110 million bushels actually. So this is significant. And also wheat has 2.5 million tons increase in terms of these 2 countries export. So in fact, on March 18th, Ukraine and Russia agreed to extend their grain deal, which will make the Black Sea ports operational as usual at least 60 additional days more. So at least in the next couple of weeks, this operation will be pretty active and their export progress will be okay. And considering this, like Ukraine and Russia's recovery in their export function, U.S. corn export might face a little bit of global competition pressure more. So that's something that I could see in the Black Sea region. And
Sing-Ki,
yep.
Back on that last slide, just for clarity, those numbers by Ukraine and Russia, those are their increased export numbers. Not, is that correct?
This is their increased export number from March. So
Gotcha.
basically just like from 1 month period, this update happened. So this is a significant update, I would say.
Thanks. I just wanted the clarification.
Thanks for the clarification, Caston. Actually, I missed that. So, and then, and for your information, like if you look at our corn export progress so far, it's certainly not an easy year. As you can see, we are pretty close to the 2019-20 year actually progress, and our forecast is, as you can see, this is like 1.85 billion bushel is our kind of final target, but we are not sure whether we can reach. Given Brazil's second crop corn harvest timing, as you can see in the green box, the corn export progress will be pretty rough during the rest of the market year. So there is some uncertainty whether we can achieve this export goal or not. And now, last but not least, is South America. In fact, the most important update in this April WASDE report, I think. Brazil harvesting is going well, and USDA updated its soybean production up again. For this 1 month update was by 1 million ton metric, which is about 39 billion bushels. And Argentina actually suffered from drought, and its crop production lowered again. So basically, they had a couple of consecutive reductions in this during the last few months. So basically, the big supply reduction in Argentina happened, and Brazil's successful harvest offset it to some extent. Probably this figure from Farm Doc will be explaining pretty much about the outlook of what's happening in South America. Actually, in South America, like a lot of countries in the southern region, they suffered a lot from the drought, and then the other region was okay. So Argentina and Uruguay, they actually had a big impact from the severe drought and had much lower harvest than last year. But Brazil and Paraguay, they had considerably higher harvest than last year. So this is kind of, as you can see, offset effect we can see. So, but overall, we are expecting higher production from South American countries in total. So if we think about the soybean export again, it's pretty clear that our slow progress was mainly due to the Brazil supply, because when we were having very slow progress in soybean export, that is kind of pretty overlap with Brazil soybean is coming to the market. So as you can see, this competition effect is certainly affecting the US market outlook as well. So so I think this is the overview of the current market. April WASDE report is usually not a volatile report, and the May WASDE report will be a bigger driver, I would say, of the market, which will be released on May 12th. So because it's going to show and talk something about the new crop market. Any questions?
Yes, Sing-Ki, now you talked about Argentina, and some, as they're reading the news, maybe an Ohio farmer, well, great, we hear Argentina's had some issues this past year with weather. So they might be asking, and based on what you're showing from Brazil and some other countries, I think we already know the answer, but I want to make sure we know the answer is, do you think foreign markets are going to buy more US crops because of Argentina's production being down?
Well, my quick answer is yes, because it's all about the substitution and competition. But answering to how much, it's a little bit hard to say. In fact, Argentina's soybean production forecast that you saw is a 23-year low in their record, and its corn production is also a 5-year low. So obviously, this will make the global supply tight, and the corn this can support US exports. But now we have to think about how much Argentina corn has a substitution relationship with US crops, or Argentina crop has substitution relationship with Brazil crops. So if the Brazil can fill in most of this short supply, then US will not see a big boost in export sales. So that's why probably I'm a little bit cautiously pessimistic about the big effect in the US export support from this Argentina situation.
Is in the soybean market, Sing-Ki, is your perception that the Brazil bumper crop, the exceptional soybean crop in Brazil will replace those down bushels in Argentina, those lost the horrible production, if you will, in Argentina, or not
Yeah,
bushel for bushel.
I think so. A couple of reasons I could think. First, they kind of they are basically like not much difference in terms of the crop quality and varieties. So, for instance, in my home country, South Korea, we are sometimes importing U.S. crops, actually mainly importing U.S. crops, but we kind of diversified import sources during the couple of years. And then nowadays is kind of Brazil and Argentina was typically regarded as a one group. So if some country is kind of having issue, then maybe the other country will be regarded as an immediate substitution rather than like looking around and going to the US crops. So considering this kind of proximity between these two countries and perception of the global customers looking at the how much crops similar between these two countries, then probably Brazil may have more like likelihood to replace Argentina crops, I think.
And Siki, you also mentioned the May report that will maybe be tweaked because of our planting, and we know we've hit across Ohio into planting right now. But also last month, the progressive planting report was released, the prospective planting. What do you think about those reports? And do you have anything to highlight from those, from what you saw from those reports?
Yeah, thanks for asking that actually, because that's pretty, I think, good thing to talk about the new crop prospects. So this is the quick summary of the prospective planting in March report. So the noticeable thing to me was the corn acreage increase, of course. The report predicted about 4% corn acreage increase. And in fact, all top 20 corn producing states, except for Nebraska and Texas, are predicted to plant more corn than last year. And this rebound should be because of the low corn planting last year due to the fertilizer cost issues. And soybean acreage was also predicted up slightly, but not much. And mainly because that was North Dakota actually showed about 15% increase in soybean acreage in this survey. So that's why soybean acreage kind of still had a good shape. Ohio follows the national trend actually. So we will likely see about 100,000 acres increase in corn and no change in soybean acreage. That's kind of what the report said. When you look at the graph actually, here is the national corn and soybean acreage trend, and overall soybean has been planted more and more during the last 10 years. And when looking at the red bar, which is the update in the finer, which indicates the difference between March prediction and the finer acreage. Typically, March planting prediction has been pretty precise, except when there was a particularly severe weather issue in planting season. So it's kind of at least somewhat credible information, I would say. And here is Ohio corn and soybean acreage trend. Soybean has always been like planted more than corn in Ohio. As said before, corn is expected to be planted a little more than this year, and soybean acreage is expected to be more or less the same as last year. So that's kind of what the quick summary of this prospective planting. But probably we will get a little more precise estimate at the end of the June. June 30th will be the next planting the acreage report comes from the USDA.
Great. Our corn producers are also watching this situation in Mexico, and that's I wanted to lead to a question about what are some other things that you have on your radar as this spring, that things that you're thinking about when it comes to the corn and soybean markets here in Ohio.
Yeah, so thanks for asking that question. So that's actually something that's on my radar. This is a figure from a FarmDoc article that my colleagues and I wrote together recently. So in February, Mexico banned GM white corn by modifying its decree. And as you know, Mexico is one of the largest importer of US crop. I believe considering the ban is targeting white corn only, and as you can see, this when you look at the blue line, which is corresponding to the right axis, white corn is not really taking much portion within the export to the Mexico, but so, well, I would say, considering this portion, it will not have a huge impact in the short run by itself. But there are a few things we need to note. As far as I know, currently this dispute was brought to the USMCA panel, which takes up to 150 days to receive its dispute settlement decision. I believe US will win this case because the ban is grounded on the argument that GM crops are harmful for human health, but there's no scientific evidence. So assuming US wins this case, then we can expect three scenarios actually. First, Mexico admits this settlement decision and removes this ban, which might be ideal and will not affect market that much. So it's kind of the most, I think, smooth transition case. The second scenario would be Mexico does not admit this decision and keeping the ban and compensating the economic loss of the ban to the US, which is less likely to happen, I think. And the third, unfortunately, which is, I think, the most likely case, is Mexico does not admit it and US takes a retaliation action by imposing equivalent levels of tariffs on Mexican products. So if this happens, its timing might be in the middle of the harvesting season with this year. So the market uncertainty will be escalated, and it should be actually something that could swing the market. So we should keep an eye on this issue, I think. But speaking of the Ohio a little bit, actually, I also kind of took a look at the Ohio data, and the export from Ohio to Mexico is actually a pretty tiny portion. So we don't have very direct link to the Mexico and Ohio crops because our main customers in the global market are typically Canada and Asia. But if this issue kind of got severe and the rebalancing rebalancing of the grains delivery and supply adjustment happens within the US, then eventually it will harm Ohio market as well. So it's basically all interconnected, I would say.
Great. Sinki, you had a couple polls you wanted to initiate. Do you want to do those now before we?
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, the first one is being launched right now. Just a simple, this is a yes or no question. So pretty easy. Hopefully everyone can see that and respond. We can just give you about 30 seconds. We'll keep you quick on the trigger today. Okay, a couple more seconds. I'm going to end the poll when it hits 30 seconds. So right now it looks like we're a third farmers and 2/3. I see quite a few industry folks on here. So thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to stop sharing that. And then the next poll that will come up. I believe this is the. Okay, now this one, Sinki would like to know, in our February survey, higher input costs were picked as the biggest challenge expected in the 23-24 market. How much higher do you believe the input costs will be in percentage? So those are percentages able to choose one of those, 5% or less, 5 to 10%, 10 to 15%, 15 to 20%, and over 20.
Yeah, maybe people will feel very differently because depending on their inputs and depending on maybe their dealer network, they will face pretty different input cost pressure. So I kind of expected it should be kind of pretty much different. Actually, I had a meeting with Barry Ward to talk about this year enterprise budget, and we kind of had a chance to talk about the machinery cost, inflation. And it looks like
we're going to share results.
when I actually calculated, compared to 2 years ago, it turns out to be about 20% increase in machinery costs on average for a thousand acre size farm. So given that, probably my gut feeling of the input cost change is probably plus minus like more or less 10% increase for this year. That's kind of my bet, but probably people might feel differently. But yeah, mine is maybe like 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 was kind of something I am feeling probably. But when I'm feeling like when I'm buying some food in the cafeteria, it's much higher. So
So there's those results that you see 5 to 10% is the big winner there at 43%. And then
Mhm.
we had one last poll here. I'll launch it. Which
I
one do
think,
you,
oh,
yeah, go ahead, Eric.
no, I was just gonna say an input cost. I think with our farmer hat on, it's more on that machinery side. It depends on the category, right?
yes.
If you're asking seed versus fertilizer and relative to last year, we're seeing some nice improvement from the fertilizer market, but
Mhm.
the equipment and repair market is still wow.
True. Yeah, that's true.
So
And Eric, you bring up a good point, and I don't believe Sinki, our last poll, is going to launch for some whatever reason, but that was the question. What part of the cost do you think will show the highest increase in rate? And that was machinery, chemical, seed, labor, or other. But on the exit survey that we have for today, we asked the same exact question, so we'll be able to get your responses there.
Yeah, Eric, you hit the point actually. Oh, Nate actually cannot see anything. Maybe there is some technical issue.
And I'm assuming, Nate, that you are on a mobile device and it might have some issues pulling up the poll on a mobile device. If that's the case, Nate, could you drop that in your question and we'll be able to see that? But I think it's a mobile issue would be the problem there. Well, Sinki, we're at 8 o'clock or 1 minute to 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Do you want me
wanted
to stop share?
Sure, you can stop share.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any questions. I'm watching the Q&A for any questions that might be there. Are there any closing comments that you have before we let our folks get out into the field today?
Well, probably like with this like volatile market and kind of some issues in the input costs, probably I would say like I would emphasize two things like risk management, cost management. The two things might be kind of the key message I want to highlight given the situation, but we should still like keep an eye on the market and how the new crop market will show the shape next month. That will be another important thing. But other than that, I think I really appreciate your time and your attendance. And I look forward to meeting you in our next quarterly meeting as well.
And we would like to thank everybody for coming on. In the chat box that I just put in was the evaluation for today's event. It should send you there as you exit today's program. If not, I'll be sending that out via email, as well as I'll be sending out via email the link to where you can watch the recording when we post it later today. But just a reminder, the next Coffee and Grain Marketing with Dr. Sinki Lee will be on September 15th. Unless we said, Sinki and I were talking earlier, unless something goes crazy here over the next couple of months with some reports, then we'll do a special version. But the next one will be September 15th and then November 17th. And as always, we appreciate you joining with us today and have a good and safe planting season.